What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another podcast episode here with Magnus and I as we continue our conversation around indoor SUP and just everything that has to do with that world. Now, today will probably actually be our last episode of this mini-series focused on indoor SUP. And today is a special one as Magnus will be doing some demonstrations for us on the indoor SUP and some exercises we can do to use it as well. Now, I do apologize also. I know many of you have reached out to me on social media saying you wish this video could have been sooner, and I do apologize that we did not make this demonstration video sooner in the series. So that is my bad. I do apologize for that. But hopefully, for those of you who've been waiting for this series, be sure to jump on YouTube to watch the demonstration today, as Magnus gave us some examples to do and using the indoor SUP. So before we dive into today's episode, though, let's catch up with Magnus and see what he's been up to this past week.
Yeah, actually being out quite a lot on the water. So it's been really great to see how all this low intensity work has functioned for outdoor SUP, more or less. And it's I actually never felt that I felt so strong so early in the season. And usually paddling all winter and so on, you're a little bit drained actually when the season starts. It's cold and you're doing some volume training and strength training and so on, and it takes a while and you're back. And I tried, actually I did these impulse training sessions, doing 5 seconds all out and then rest 7 seconds and do that as long as possible. And I increased it actually to 140 times the last session. So it was good.
Well, that's fun. It sounds like a tough workout to be doing as well.
Yeah, it gives you a little bit anxiety actually, because next time you think you have to go further and doing more.
A new goal to work towards then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know for myself this past week, I did a little bit of testing also. So I actually worked on testing stroke rates. And so excited to release a full video of talking all my in-depth discoveries of those different stroke rates. So I tested a 40 strokes per minute, a 50 strokes per minute, and then 60 strokes per minute. So I'm excited to kind of share more of those stats behind those tests with you all in a full video. So I won't give too much of a spoiler alert here. But it's a mini one. The more strokes per minute does make a big difference in terms of your speed and distance. So I'm excited to talk more about that with you guys. But that's something I did this past week on my time on the water. And like you, I kind of enjoy just trying new things, testing out new things. It keeps it fun and exciting for being on the water, and also makes you a better paddler, I feel like. And so I know for you as well, like you enjoy testing different things on the water. And I'm sure it keeps it more exciting for you also on the water when you go for your paddle sessions.
What we've seen is that so many people that can actually not increase their stroke rate. They're stuck in one stroke rate and they stay there. And usually when you get provoked by the environment and so on, the weather and so on, you drop in frequency or stroke rate. Meaning that the best way to stabilize yourself and is keep driving the board. Increase the stroke rate more or less when you feel instability. More the blade is in the water, the more stability, and the higher the speed, the more stability. So that's something more people should work on.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because last night I was at our local club paddle race, and it was some windy conditions, and so we ended up doing an upwind, downwind kind of mini race there. And yeah, I was definitely doing a higher stroke rate, just trying to keep my balance. Like I said, the more time my blade was in the water, the better it was for me in terms of staying on my paddleboard. So I know I did overall pretty well. I didn't fall at all on the straightaways, but there were a few buoy turns that I definitely tipped off my board into the water, dealing with the waves and the current and trying it around a buoy turn and pivot turning. Definitely need some more practice in that area. But other than that, though, yeah, doing the higher stroke rate definitely even helps me stay more balanced on my paddleboard, even those more choppy conditions. So definitely makes a big difference in terms of stability as well, for sure.
One question to you there. Do you work with all different intensity zones during your week, or are you staying in the same, more or less the same zones when you train out?
So for me, I do a mixture of majority focused on the lower heart rate zones with some mixture in the upper heart rate zones. On a full week of training, I'll do like 80% roughly in zone 2, and that on time on the water. And then I'll usually mix in a day with some zone 4 training. So you use about an hour paddle session, focus more on getting the upper heart rate zones in zone 4. Now, I don't just go out for like an hour zone 4 only. I do break it up to help me mentally as well to stay focused. So I'll range it between anywhere from 5 minutes up to 10 minutes usually in zone 4, with usually a minute in like zone 2, just to kind of break it up. And then it gets me back in the rhythm again in zone 4 for the full 4 hour, the full hour session. And then sometimes too in the same week on another day, I'll do a shorter session, usually 30 minutes or so, focus on the upper heart rate zones. And once again, not just going out there for 30 minutes all out, breaking it up into full out sessions. If it's zone 5, usually no more than a minute. So usually 30 seconds to a minute of just kind of going hard out to get my heart rate up there. And then depending of how much time I want to spend in the upper zone, I'll shorten that rest period. So if I want to actually push up to a proper heart rate in zone 5, the short rest periods, or the rest periods are definitely much shorter to keep my heart rate up there and continue to build upon my heart rate. But if I'm mostly just focused like on lower zone 5 or just upper zone 4, I'll have my rest periods from between those like minute paddle sessions be a little bit longer, like anywhere to 3 minutes to 4 minutes, to help my heart rate to come back down again, to kind of push hard again for another minute. Now, also that minute's not going to, usually is not going to rise me up to a full zone 5 level when I'm taking that much rest period, but it still allows me to push hard and allow me to even work on my form and technique, going on a more all-out sprint effort, but not being fully fatigued by doing that over and over again in a shorter rest period. So depending on what I'm working on, it's kind of what I focus on. But overall, I do kind of use the runner perspective of doing more of the 80-20 rule. So usually 80% focus on zone 2 because that base is super important. And then the 20% I do dedicate to more of the upper zones and focusing on those.
Yeah. Have you worked anything with your sprinting at this stage, or?
The sprinting is definitely something I'm still getting into. I've only been racing for a few years now, and I've been really focused more on the longer distance, especially the 10K. As many of you who followed me on YouTube, you know, last year? I tried to do the 10K in underneath an hour. And at the time, I started just doing that on my inflatable race board because that's all I had at the time, and did pretty well. But now, as I'm on a harder race board and it has a little bit better performance, definitely getting closer and closer towards that goal. But in terms of sprinting, that's something I'm getting more into as well, because sprinting, when you're going all out and max effort, your form tends to suffer when you do that. And so I know it's for myself as well, when I'm going all out, my form and technique definitely has gone out the window. And so I'm working better on trying to improve my technique and form in those all out sessions, especially in sprinting, as well as I've learned too that even though it is really important to increase your stroke rate for a sprint, there is a certain point as well when you do what we would call spinning. And so if all you're doing is just simply throwing your blade in the water as fast as possible, but you're not going anywhere, like it doesn't make a difference. Like you can be going like 100 strokes per minute, but if you're just spinning in the water, it's not doing you any good. So I'm trying to find the right balance of like a high stroke rate that still provides max amount of power for that stroke rate as well. So for me, I don't have an answer for that yet. I'm still trying to find what is that good stroke rate for me to do, let's say like a 200-meter sprint, which is roughly a minute long. So trying to find like what is a stroke rate I can do in that time frame that is my max stroke rate possible by still giving me the max power possible as well to the stroke rates. And so for me, Magnus, like what have you found from your terms of learning how to sprint? Is there kind of a stroke rate you find that's good for you in terms of like a 200-meter sprint, or what are kind of your concepts behind that?
I get that question quite often, and you know, everything is based on your equipment and your current condition, more or less, your current capacity. So what blade size do you have, what type of board do you have, how wide is it, and how wide is the grip between your hands, and so on. All these things matters. And there's, you know, a calculation called EWPS, effective work per stroke, that shows there's a balance between speed and stroke rate. But that depends on what you compare it against. So what data, if you have done some tests before, then you know what did you use for equipment there and so on, and how can you, so you can actually go a lot faster sometimes just dropping in stroke rate and just focusing on power focus or power.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's so hard to say something if we don't know the conditions. But what we can see is that in so many different endurance sports is that your average speed correlates with your maximum speed. So if you gradually increase your maximum speed, that will increase your average speeds for longer distances as well. And we've seen that also that the people that start working as a sprinter, they become the best endurance athletes at the end. So that's why people shouldn't be afraid of working more with the sprint training and work from there, because it's frightening, you know, going all out and so on. You feel very unstable. But if you do it gradually, it works, and it's so much fun because you have so many more ways to train. You can shift between intensity all the time.
That's something I'm working implementing more in my workout program as I become a better distance pilot, trying to do more sprint sessions as well to, as you said, kind of help my max speeds to improve, which also help my overall speeds improve also. So like you said, it's kind of funny how you like work on sprinting, become a better distance pilot. It kind of seems like that shouldn't work that way, but like you said, it does work that way, and something that we should take into more consideration.
Yeah, and you know, most people they don't realize that, okay, if I use this technique or this equipment and so on, I can paddle faster. But I mean, okay, I can do that for you know, some minutes, but I'm going for 10Ks. So then I have to use totally different equipments and different style, you know, paddling technique and everything. But the body, it's what can adapt to what you train it in. So, you know, realizing that, okay, this equipment will make me faster, but I'm not there right now. So I had to work with it more to get there in the end. So it's not that hard to understand when you look at it in detail.
No, exactly. And as we we're talking before we started this podcast, actually, along those same lines, is like that with equipment side of things, you mentioned something about how you can even, for example, your blade size, if you paddle with a bigger and bigger paddle blade, you're obviously getting more force and power out of that bigger blade size. But it's not something you just jump to like a bigger blade size all of a sudden and start using that because your body can't handle that. But the progression too, you start with a smaller blade size and gradually work up from there. And your body learns to adapt and use that properly, then it also enhance your performance, which is an interesting topic because it's something I feel like we don't really talk much in the SUP world. We kind of buy our one paddle, and that's the one paddle we use for all of our training and all of our races, and that's it. And that's what I do as well. I mean, and also it's part of a limiting factor in terms of how much gear you have, obviously. But if you do have more gear, should we be using more of that gear, or what are your thoughts behind that, Magnus?
Yeah, but say, you know, if we look at it at, you know, pure strength training, so doing things with, okay, I increase the blade size. Okay, I don't go out for an hour with a very big blade in that case. I can use it like in reps and sets. So, okay, I do 12 strokes on one side, and then I do 12 strokes on the other side. That's one set, for instance. And then you stop, rest, and do it again. And you do that for, yeah, maybe 3 to 5 sets or something. Mm-hmm. That's a very good session, because then you have to work with your whole body. And what we're discussing in Indoor SUP, for instance, is that we're actually making our joints, our whole body much stronger to handle that force or that load. So just by stabilizing ourselves will make us go faster. If our body collapsing because of I have a bigger blade that I really can't, you know, work with, then nothing happened. So I will go probably slower with a bigger blade. So if I gradually strengthen my body to handle that bigger blade, I will go faster, much faster than I did before. So no, you know, rocket science.
No, yeah.
But people don't really have the full picture. That's so easy just to look at someone else. That person have that type of equipment, that person go fast, and therefore I use the exact same equipment.
Mm-hmm.
That person had a lot of different conditions, and you know, before that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely all a journey. Like we all don't start ahead of the game, like where other people are at, kind of thing. We have to start where we're at and build up to our own journey, kind of a thing. And for example, like last night, my race, the guy, it's just our local club race, so not a huge big deal, but we have fun doing it every week. But the guy who typically wins them all is a guy who just had tons of years of experience in the water since he was a kid, always surfing and different water conditions. He just knows how to read the water so well. So for example, like last night, we had more of an up and downwind conditions. This guy can just so naturally just learn how to connect the bumps together and just cruise. And I'm like, I feel like I'm doing a good job for the most part connecting bumps and trying to ride the waves pretty well. But there's something about him where he just knows how to read it even better and just took off with hardly any effort and just knows how to read that water so well. And once again, I'm realizing that it just takes more time on the water and more time of just putting in the work and the experience to work up there. Because I'm not going to like show up again next week like, all right, I know how to connect these bumps now. I know how to ride these waves. Like, I'm gonna be just as fast as this dude. Like, no, like it's going to take time of just being on the water and learning myself how to read it properly and do things. So definitely a long-term, like a long journey. It's not just something we jump over overnight. I wish it would be sometimes we could just jump ahead. But yeah, unfortunately, it usually takes years to build up to where some people are already at currently.
Yeah, I wouldn't actually like if I could do that, you know, take a jump to a whole new level. That wouldn't be any fun, because it's the, you know, the journey behind that. That's the fun part. And everything today is, you know, based on comparison, meaning that you always compare yourself with someone else or something else, meaning that you forget about all the steps you need to take and how fun it actually is to take every single step, because you learn something on the way there. So if people started to look at themselves instead of compare themselves to others, they will enjoy the journey so much more.
Exactly. So with that being said, like Indoor SUP is a great tool to kind of, like we said, kind of like rewind sometimes in our skills and our abilities and start in a fresh point to build back up to where we actually want to be. So today, like Magnus, like take us away, show us kind of how the setup works, maybe why you have the bands set where they are today currently on top of the door, and show us some exercises, and yeah, show us some things of how we can use Indoor SUP to help us improve our skills.
Good. And we can here, you know, start with the shaft. A lot of people ask how far and how long should the shaft be? And what I can say there is that as soon as we don't hit our feet or the floor, that's a good length on. And the same here, we can, you know, start with, you know, put it on our head, 90 degrees angles in the elbows. So that's why I have a tape here. I know I can work with my hand below that or above that. Meaning the longer the shaft is, the more resistance, the more torque it will be, the more you will have to stabilize your body if it's longer. If we just short it down, you know, I can, same here, I can grab it here, and then I can work more with the specific part, feel stable in that direction. But longer it is here, and I usually try to have it all the way to the max. But it's at some exercises it's good to be able to work further down. But if you're going to do a full stroke, then it will, you know, hit the floor. And some floors doesn't like to be hit. So fine, and all this not really so important. It's just, you know, if you have the shaft, you can work. And Indoor SUP is not actually SUP. It's no simulation of SUP paddling. That's what we did with all the ergometers. These we tried to, you know, simulate the paddling stroke on the water as good as possible. But indoor SUP is working with our bodies instead of, you know, thinking that we're paddling. It is similar, but it's not the same way. So that's why we can work in a different way with indoor SUP compared to being on water.
Mm-hmm.
You see me here, it's a little bit rigged already here. We'll find that door is actually locked, so that's why. But you know,
all good.
It has this foam cushion more or less. So you put it either on top of the door, or on the side of the door, or below the door. Then you have 3 different angles to work from. And usually working with like the upper body and the torso flexion and so, we want a high attachment, because then we're pulling downwards. If we want to work more with the arms and back, then we use the low attachment. Or if we want to attach something to our legs and to our knees, then we can keep it, you know, at knee height, or maybe from below as well. It's more similar if it's from below and from top, working with the legs. I usually, you know, find the resistance that as least resistance as possible, meaning that I just want to feel what muscle I work with, because I will focusing more on the movement and the stabilization of the other parts of the body, instead of, you know, having to pull. If I would go with the black resistance band, which is the heaviest, if I do that, and I have some, I'll put some tape here to just mark where I usually stand. But so if I stand like this and gonna do something here, and I have to rotate like this to be able to pull it down, my body gives away. So then the resistance is too heavy. So start from the least or the lowest resistance, like the yellow. I usually have like the red. I've been working with that quite a lot this winter. So here I can choose, you know, below the tape or above the tape, a little bit depending on where and what part of the body I want to work with. So if I want to work with, let's say, my hip flexors, I usually have a high attachment. I try to keep my body as square as possible. So, you know, everything should be aligned. The knees, the feet, the hips, the shoulders, and also the neck. And these are the things you're actually focusing more on and a specific movement. So in this case, if I'm going to work with my hip flexors, I want to stand slightly bent knees and just, you know, focus on my on the groin here and try to find the inner hip flexor muscles. And I want to activate them just to bend forward. So it's a very small movement. And interesting part here is just to find that. And it could take, you know, several sessions before you really find it. And then you suddenly, wow, there they were. So then it's so fun to get out on the water and, okay, can I incorporate the hip flexors in my palate? So here then, if I just, you know, collapsing in my back and neck and everything, it will be very hard to find these muscles. Therefore, I need to stabilize everything else. Try to just keep everything as steady as possible, and then just do a very small movement. Now I maybe explain one of the more difficult muscle groups to find and work with. But just to explain, you know, what this is about. These are the small things that will help you so much on the water. And the more you train here, the more you can stay focused on focusing on one specific part of your body. That means that when you go out on the water and you know, it's waves, currents, and wind. If you just focus on these things, you forget about everything else and you feel quite stable. But if you let your brain just, you know, take in whatever around you, you will focusing more on everything outside you and inside you, and that will make you more unstable in that case. So for another exercise that's quite similar with the hip flexors is working with the abdominals. The same here, work from a high attachment, and then you stand in a locked position, and the only thing you do now is contract your abdominals. So like a standing sit-up. So here you won't even, you know, pull with your arms or anything. Here it's just, you know, keeping the shaft and lift your torso a little bit and then contract. So the movement itself will be standing there. You see? Is it, you know?
Mm-hmm. No, exactly.
That moment is. But it's very, you know, do that for 50 strokes an hour for an hour. And you have 3,000 sit-ups.
Yeah, it's a lot of sit-ups to be doing. Sounds like a good exercise.
Exactly. And as the resistance is not that big as when you're, you know, laying down on the floor and lift your whole upper body up. This is so much, it's just as effective, but it's so much easier. And so you will train the same muscles, but the focus will be, you know, keeping the other part of the body as connected, as stiff as possible. So doing, you know, like standing sit-ups like this, that wouldn't help our paddling. So that's why, and when I do these sessions, you know, I'm so focused on not, you know, collapsing anywhere in the body. I'm drained with sweat. And, you know, my heart rate is in the low part of zone 1. You know, it's, for me, it's, you know, it's hardly 100 strokes beats per minute.
Yeah, like you're saying, I think a big part of this too is in the exercise when we're doing just a one moment or one motion over and over and over again, even just with engaging the core, it's really just, like you say, creating that muscle memory movement so that when we go back in the water again, and there are more factors to consider, we just have that muscle memory kind of built into our brains even. And so even if we're just like flexing or engaging our core over and over again, that exercise, sure, it's definitely going to be a good workout, especially for the core one. But it just allows you, I think, that brain to memorize that movement. So in the water, you're just naturally engaging your core and stabilizing your spine with every paddle stroke because you already create that paddle memory movement in your muscles.
Yeah. And, you know, the body in stressful situations, and stress meaning, you know, tiredness, fatigue, that's stress. Meaning that what we're training most, it was what the brain are going to make us doing. So I realized that in climbing, for instance, the more I trained my upper body and my arms, the more I was using that in a stressful situation instead of using my legs more, which it would have been so much better and so much more effective. So then I had to refocus and start working. Most of my work in climbing was training my legs instead of my hands and arms. And this will be the same here. The more you focus on doing something with a high quality and do it for a long period of time, that is what your brain will pull you towards when it feels insecure. So that's also how you can, you know, be more relaxed in more stressful situations. We can't, another, if we want to simulate like more of a paddle stroke, I usually take like You could do this the other way around, but usually I blue and yellow will together be the same resistance as the red one. So, so here, when we have, this simulates the stroke a little bit more, because then you can do, you can follow through the stroke depending on what exercise you do. But here, when you do that, you need to, you know, make it the right length, because or else you'll hit the floor. So here then we can work more. If I work now, for instance, with my back muscles and my latissimus, I want to pull back with a straight arm, and I don't want to lift my shoulder or put it too far forward. Then it will end up in an outer position, and we're at the weakest at the outer position. So always try to have your shoulder blades connected, meaning that your shoulder is pulled back. Then you get much more power onto this. So like for rehab exercise, then you can do use only maybe the yellow resistance, and then you can actually have it in outer position and try to stabilize the movement there. But for in this case, it's better to pull the shoulder blade back. So if you feel that you're too forward, pull it back and try to keep it back when you do. So here I can work with my both arms. So now I just pull with the lower and press with the upper. So now I want to synchronize. So I will do the same movement. And this is what we're going to train for, is that I will, without the shaft, I would be able to do the same movement. So this needs to be synced. So the more you pull, the more you increase your stroke rate. If both arms work together with the whole upper body, the more power you will create.
So with that concept real quickly, I know a lot of people always ask me that question too, like, do you pull your bottom arm or not, kind of thing. And one thing I've always taught more for the longer distance paddles is just using your top arm, and you're obviously with the motion of your top or upper body hinging forward, but using that top arm to really apply the force down on the paddle blade, and more just using that bottom arm to just simply carry the load as you're applying the force down, kind of a thing. So not so much pulling, it feels like pulling, but really all it's doing is carrying that load. And then I teach more for sprintings. That's when you want to do more of a push down and do some pulling to bottom arm to increase the stroke rate. Would you agree with that or disagree with that? Would you say even in distance paddles, you still should be focusing on some pulling your bottom arm, or what are kind of some of your thoughts with that?
It's the same here. If we just focus on keeping the exact same tempo throughout the race, for instance, or the distance, then, you know, we want to do it in the most effective way. And that meaning keeping the speed, but decrease the heart rate. But in every race, we need to use our arms, and we need to use as much of our body weight as possible. Meaning that most of the part, we will use the body weight, because keeping the same pace and getting as long DPS as possible, distance per stroke, meaning that if I can, you know, make my whole upper body a solid unit, meaning that if that falls forward, you know, hitting the water with the angle of the shaft like that, that means that the board will pull itself towards the blade, and I will pull the board forward to be able to keep standing up. So that will sort itself out more or less. But as soon as you want to do an acceleration as fast as possible, you need to use your arm. Then you need to pull. And you do that maybe for 3 to 5, 6 strokes. And then you start working with the whole body again. But it takes too long. It's too slow to use that for a sprint start, it will gradually get there, but then the other has passed you. And this is the same as soon as you do a bow turn and so on, you drop in speed, meaning that you need to use your arms to accelerate back up to the highest average speed again. So this is why we always work with accelerations. The same in, you know, passing someone. Like elite paddlers, if you want to pass someone going in 9.5 k's an hour, for instance, it will probably take you, I would say, at least 12 seconds, maybe 18 strokes or something to do that. And you can't do that slow. You need to go quite hard and create as much speed as possible, or else you will never get by. So that's why we have to look at every aspect of this and what we're going to do with our bow. And, you know, training all different parts makes the whole chain so much stronger. And it makes the training so much more fun instead of doing the same thing all the time. So that's why, you know, something as simple as this could be so much fun, because if you understand and can see actually how you perform better just by something you, what is this worth? You know, a shaft and some rubber bands won't help me. But if you look at every detail, we will see that there's so many things to work with, and every little part here will make such a big difference when we're out on the water, because that's where everything gets lost. So, did I answer your question about using the?
Yeah, definitely answer the question. Like you said, like we are, when you do want to improve or raise your paddle cadency or do a sprint or get around somebody, you definitely do want to use more of your arms, as you said, because it allows you to just get your paddle in and out of the water faster. But obviously, to do that long term is not effective, because obviously your arm muscles are much smaller than your core and hip muscles. So you definitely want to go back again to incorporating your body weight and your whole body into the paddle stroke, because for the long term, as like I think as you're saying, that's the more efficient way of doing it. But at the same time too, we still need to incorporate, as you're saying, the arm muscles to get that higher cadency and to get our speed up. So I definitely see what you're saying. Like, you need both sides of it, I think, which is why it's also important to train both sides of it, so we can use either option when we're doing a paddle race or even just a paddleboard workout.
And, you know, this is most people, you know, look at thinking about paddling techniques. So in many cases, what is shown, if someone uses specific technique, it's mostly style, because it's depending on their body constitution and so on. So the same paddling technique could look totally different, but it's the same laws of nature that we have to work with. And we have to work with our own body to be able to handle and create as much power as possible. So that's why we should focus inwards instead of, you know, look at what other people do all the time, and you know, try to find our own way in this matter. So I would say usually when I do a full stroke, so even now, if I'm going to focus on my arms and the arm work here, I want to have something up from above, because then I need to be able to be forward. So I want always to be feeling like I'm falling forward, because then I know I'm in the right position. As soon, I don't know if we discussed this before, but we talk about 3 different types of balance. And if I stand in what we can see is that we have the best range of motion, we have the best stability when we're standing at hip width. That meaning, if I put my one foot like that, and so the length of my foot between my feet, that's usually referred to hip width. That meaning I can move around like quite stable in this position. So if I'm looking down and imagine like a square around my feet, If I stand like this with my arms at my side, we have the center of gravity like 2 fingers below the belly button in the middle of the body. So imagine like a line going down from that point. That will end up somewhere between my feet. Meaning as soon as this point is not outside my feet, I have stable balance. Someone can push me, I can still be standing. But that means that's the safest position for the brain. So the brain always wants to pull me back into a stable position. This is what we've seen in like running and so on, that we're sitting down too much today. So as soon as I lift one of my feet, the brain wants to drop it down again. Meaning I walk around like this. My energy goes from side to side, which is very ineffective. But we're designed to be standing on one leg. Then the longer we can stand on that, the further we get on every stride. So that's what we have, gone away from. So what we need to do here to be able to work with our body weight and gravitation. So if I imagine this square again, and then I imagine my center of gravity, and I lean as far forward as possible, then I will feel quite insecure. It will take a lot of more energy to keep me standing. So therefore, the brain doesn't want me in that position because it costs more energy. So then it pulls me back. That meaning that so many people that want to use their body weight, but they're so afraid of falling forward because they don't really trust themselves catching themselves on the blade. Meaning that when they try to lean forward, they're behind going backwards. So then the center of gravity is still, in the middle of our feet. So then we don't really use that type of movement. So what it's called is, we call it offset balance, meaning that when the center of gravity is outside this square. So what I want to is to be comfortable or stable, increase that stability, to be including that I'm standing on my toes and my front balls of the feet. So I could be, leaning a little bit forward all the time. So what I want usually when I train with Indoor SUP is that I want to lean, lifting the heels just slightly. Like in cross-country skiing, you go up on your toes like that, be able to fall forward on your toes. But that is hard because in the snow there's something, firm to put your poles on. The water is not as firm, so if you don't break that moment at some point, you will end up, on your stomach. So here I want to have something. So I lean a little bit forward all the time. So even in this position, here I can work with my arms, pulling, lower arm, and I can just sometimes just do that, pulling here. But I also can work together, so pulling and pressing. Usually I work with this part or this part and this part by itself. And here it's very, you can work in many ways here. You can either, pulling upwards, which will be wrong. So here you want to pull the shoulder blade back. So pull the shoulder blade and then roll. Shoulder blade and then roll. So that's a way to work with both attachments combined and work with your lower arm and increase the strength in the pulling part. So the more here, the more you work and find that, and then you're going to go out on the water and feel the same. You want to see when the blade is in the water, you really want to pull when you need it, and so on. So that's how we can work with that. We have another, I don't know if everyone knows about, what we call the lever drive. In kayaking and so on, it's called power stroke, meaning that we can actually use the shaft or the paddle as a lever. So we actually, we pulling the board forward by, breaking the paddle forward. And the fun part or interesting part of this is that when I focus on, and in this case, I usually focus on getting my upper elbow forward, meaning that it's not just the arm working forward, it's the whole body. That's the only way I can push my elbow forward. When I do that, we get more power on the other side of the board. So this meaning I'm paddling my right side. So if I focus on this, pushing my elbow forward, the board will actually go to the side I'm paddling instead of going in the opposite direction. So this is a very effective way both to increase the speed, but also to increase the core stability.
So real quick before we move on, talking about the upper and lower arm, I think you'll go back to just one band on the top again, but what are the two exercises you use that? What's the exercise you do to work just on top arm? And then what's the exercise you would use to work just on the lower arm?
So the first here, working with what we call chest paddling, meaning that pressing down and meaning not pushing the arm forward. Now we just want to press it. We want to, this is an extension of my upper body. So when I lean forward, this should just follow. And because the shaft is angled in that direction, meaning that when I fall forward, I keep that. But here I want to apply pressure. So I stand in this position. You can see I'm here instead. So here, I just want to work with pressing here. So now I can be, have a very open grip with my lower arm and just, put the handle at the lower part of my palm. And then I just press down. So the motion is actually just like this. And here I want to feel the big chest muscle, the pectoralis major. So just working with that. Try to feel. And this is usually what you feel when you're going to drive your or increase your stroke rate. Just increasing. Same here from this angle. And compared to, we separate these, and so here we work with the upper arm and just keep that, I would say like 110 degrees angle of your elbow. If it's 90 degrees, it will feel very strange. You will have the shaft quite vertical. So, that's why we don't want to both arms straight, because then we will end up in a little bit of an angle. So pulling that back, it will be much better. So this is just continuation, that we keep that position with the arms, and then we just fall forward. Everything will follow through that. Mm-hmm. Working then with the lower arm. So we want everything here working in concert, more or less. So lower arm, again, you can have an open grip. It's very good, instead of, soon as we grip with our thumb, we tend to trigger the grip reflex, meaning that we're gripping too hard, get too static. So when we train, like especially indoor SUP, then we can work with thumb on top of the grip. So here now it's just, instead of now I'm just pulling backwards with my lower arm. So everything I focus on is doing that motion. The upper arm is just steering and keeping the shaft in position. So just pulling like that. That means when I fall forward, this will continue the movement and pulling back. And even if you want to accelerate, so keeping that, and the end of that could be a pulling motion. That means it's not pulling or just like that. Everything, you have to adapt to the situation. So if you need to, increase the speed a little bit, then you can pull with your arm at the end. So all these things you can work and combine with the indoor SUP before you understand it and work with it on the water. So the basic is just keep doing that. Try to find a way for your shoulder to work. Best way here is to put a mirror in front of you. Then you can always have a look at how do you twist your hips or knees or something like that. And you see that the longer the shaft is here right now, if I have too high of resistance, the shaft will be moving like this. And then I'm not stable. Then I need to use my chest muscles even in when I want to work with my back muscles and the latissimus. So just try to find a position and it doesn't matter how long it takes, just try to find where you feel that muscle and how it looks. It doesn't matter in the beginning. It's more of finding the right muscle groups and finding that specific muscle. Then it gradually will get better and better, and you can use it more and more out in the water. But you need to find it in that comfortable and safe environment, like your home, for instance. So I can feel a little bit intimidated by doing this outside, because people, what is he doing? That looks silly. But
I'd agree with that. So obviously, when we talk a lot about in the other podcast episodes too, and just you're saying now the importance of using the lower resistance band to really focus on finding those muscle groups and improving our stroke. Is there ever a time though when you do use a heavier weighted band for an exercise indoor SUP, or you typically just don't use heavier weight bands?
I don't use more heavier resistance than I can handle. There's no point. For stand-up paddling, it's because this is so specific. If you go into the gym, of course, if you do a personal best or something, do it in the way you can, just to be able to lift that weight, and that will increase your general strength. But this is not about general strength. So this means that if I want to get the best effect out of this on the water, if I always try to make something like that won't help. So that's why it's so you get more, of course, if you just want to burn calories, there's no problem. There's no wrong and right in this way. We just have to focus on what is right for me and what the purpose is for me. If I just want to burn calories, it's fine. There's nothing.
Would you say then too as well, you could start obviously training with the lower weight bands to really hone in that technique and muscle groups, and maybe when you start over time learning how to really engage those muscle groups and work our technique, maybe you could slowly move up even in a band weight just to improve upon your strength and engaging those same muscle groups. Would that be a good idea or no?
That would be very good, and that's what we're striving for. So this winter I've mostly been working with the red resistance, because I found found it to be the most effective for me. If I went for the green, and in some exercise I've used the green and so on. I never used the black actually. I've done it for testing, and that's when I found out that if I increased the resistance, that was the same heart rate, because that pulled me back faster. And the hardest exercise in indoor SUP, I think, is what we call explosive activation. And that's another thing that most people haven't worked with, and that is what we're doing on the way back with that. So in this case, I want to feel that it's slightly tensed, and going from here and as explosive as possible forward. And this is the that is the hardest. And I tried with the red, I couldn't do it. I got too tired. So I've actually done it even without resistance, just to be able to stabilize myself on my toes. So it's good. You can work with it like just locking your legs in this position, and then without moving anything else, just pulling forward. Because when you do that with a lot of force, that movement itself will pull the board with you. And then you can also do it like this. So you're pushing your hips forward the same way.
Yeah, I agree.
Even put resistance band around my waist to be able to straighten up, and because this is a good motion to let go of the static tension on your hips. And the brain is, it's smart, but it's not smart in every situation. So being out on the water for a long time, if you don't think about it, the brain will put most of your body weight onto your hips and your hip joints, because that's passive tissue, meaning that if that takes all your body weight, it costs less energy. But the effect in the end will be that you ruin your joints in your pelvic and around your hips. So focusing more on mobilizing muscles like leg and glutes and so on, it's so much better. So instead of when you're trying to stabilize your board, don't use your hips, use your legs and your glutes, meaning that that's the legs that's gonna get tired, not your hips, because the hips gonna work to be the springs. If they're too static for too long, you can hardly walk out from the board, because it's going to feel like this. Yeah. So all these things we have to think about what is the cause and what is the effect of what we feel in the body and so on.
That reversion, I think you call it reversion workout as well, of using that band behind you and pulling it forward. And I tried it again this last week for a workout. It's exhausting. Yeah, I only use that 10-pound weight as well. And I was like, I'll just rep out like half-hour session of this, no problem. And wow, like 10 minutes in, 15 minutes in, it was burning. Like mostly in my shoulders. He said it was a lot of just like you said, like fast movement, pulling that band forward again. And it's like really wore my shoulders out more than anything on that workout.
Yeah. And we're not so, we're so untrained in doing that. It's, what we call muscle balance. We want to train in paddling, it's mostly pulling muscles in that way. If we can increase the strength in the pressing muscles as well, we will be even stronger in the pulling mode. Because if all the muscles like the biceps and triceps and so on are equally strong, we will be generally much stronger in everything we do. But if you're just working on the biceps and the triceps, that's not a good function, and we won't be able to lift anything hard in the end anyway.
So, no, exactly.
In working with the upper arm, like in that moment, we're engaging the biceps to keep the angle of that arm. The same here. Here we're engaging the triceps to be able to keep the arm straight. So therefore, every muscle work in a specific way to be able to handle the body well and to do what we want it to do. But if we forget parts of that, nothing really happens.
Mm-hmm.
So in the end, there will be no effect. So
yeah, that's good. Yeah,
that's
it's cool seeing those exercises, and also there's like way more like individual exercises you can do still with indoor SUP. But even though it's important, like we said, to separate the paddle stroke and work on those different aspects of the paddle stroke with indoor SUP, it is still also good to use indoor SUP to even work just in our paddle stroke in full. Like say we're doing a full cycle of our paddle stroke with indoor SUP. Is it still good to do that as well, or is it more beneficial, if you said, just to divide it up? Obviously, both are important, but would you still suggest that you work on your full paddle stroke using indoor SUP or no?
I can show you how I usually, if I'm going to do that and focus like, okay, now I'm going to do a sprint session in indoor SUP, for instance, and I want to engage as much muscles as possible to keep them in a certain position.
As well, just setting that up. Something I've done as well to use a bottom anchor and a top anchor at the same time, because as of right now, there's only one anchor point for the door frame. The way I've kind of worked around that is I've actually just used one of the hand grips that come in the kit as well for like lat pulls and stuff. And I just simply put that behind my door frame and leave the D-ring exposed on the bottom side of the door frame as a lower anchor point. So for those of you who already have an indoor SUP and want to do both the top anchor and lower anchor, that's kind of a workaround you can do. You can set your top anchor using the door anchor point. And then for the lower part of it, you can just throw one of those hand grips behind the door frame to use at a lower anchor point. So just kind of a little hack I've learned to do as well for using a top and lower anchor point at the same time.
So this requires, I would say, like 4 or preferable 5 meters apart. If you have that, that is a very good setup. Or else you have to work with it from one side or the other. So here, for instance, this is how you work with your legs. So this you can do, more or less. You don't have to have any resistance to the shaft here. You can just hold the shaft in your hands and, tilting pushing your knees forward and then, straighten them. So this is more or less what we want to do on the board, because if we end the stroke with kicking the board forward, we will actually gain, up to, we measured up to 4 inches in each stroke if the person never have used that before. But for more experienced paddler, you might use, half an inch or something. And, doing that for 3,000 strokes, that's a good advantage. So here, for instance, I could work, lifting my heels a little bit and then just pulling. So here I can work with every part. It's not exactly like on the water, but you will work with the same muscles and the same type of movement. So that is actually good. And that will, that will drive up the heart rate a little bit more as well. So every part of it you can use for work with a specific muscle. It's so important that you learn how to be as light-sided or symmetrical as possible, because that will help you, especially during long distance races. So if you just have a slide of that you cannot have the same mobility on one side to the other, will make a lot effect on the water, because we're tending to go one way more than the other. And we have to compensate for that all the time, meaning that in the end, it drains us on energy and we don't go as fast to that point as we want. So the shorter you paddle, the better.
Yeah, exactly. Another way too, I've used Indoor SUP to train for exercises, even outside of just doing focusing on mobility and muscle memory, as well as just focusing on like my cadency. So for example, I'm currently trying to increase my paddle cadency up to a higher number for my paddle sessions. And the way I've started to train my muscle memory to do that for that style of increasing my stroke rate is just doing that on Indoor SUP. So I'll take the Indoor SUP and I'll set it up and use a lighter weight band. I'll just focus on trying to get my body used to that faster rhythm of going through a paddle stroke at a higher cadency. So I know we talked about in the past too, is I'll just set up a metronome. So if I'm doing, for example, like focusing on trying to get to 60 strokes per minute, I'll set a metronome on for that setting and just hear the ticking sound of tick, tick, tick. And I'll just focus on trying to get used to paddling the higher cadency. And then once I go on the water, I'm already creating that muscle memory to get used to that cadency of paddling that rhythm on the water. So that's just another way I've noticed too of using Indoor SUP for an exercise is even improving my paddle cadency in that way also.
This is the same here. We should, the more advanced you want to go, you should be able to know what stroke rate you are without any metronome. So going out on the water, I should be able to, this is 50, this is 60, this is 70. And that we usually train with elite paddlers. So they start to learn that the younger they are, the better, because then it's easier. And then they know where we can see how their body moves at a certain stroke rate. So if we lose it, the same here, going to higher stroke rate, meaning that your body's not coping with that. Same here, going to for a too high of resistance, your body is not functioning and therefore it's not effective. So gradually working yourself up to that. And what I found here that I could keep a very good stroke rate, like I worked for 90 minutes, 90 strokes per minute, and still be in zone 1. Meaning that the resistance bands pull you back to the starting position. In stand-up paddling, we need to lift ourselves back to the starting position. So therefore, it will be much more work, cost more energy. That's why we can use it to be able to learn and understand how we can work with this easy resistance instead of just going for harder and harder. And that will help us be able to go harder and harder. So
No,
that
exactly.
is more or less, and it's the same here, what we're actually doing. If we don't look at the low heart rate, so we look instead of how to build the strength in every joint and every all the passive tissue, is that you're doing like in the gym, you take a weight that you can do at least like 50 repetitions with. Same here. You find a resistance where you can do that, and then you build that. That will be able for you to try to do your personal best in deadlifting or whatever.
Exactly.
So it will be
good.
Both useful on the water and useful for our bodily function, more or less, that we can, work our way around in everyday life. So that's another aspect.
Exactly. No, it's so good. And there's like, as we were saying in today's episode, there's like so many different ways you can use Indoor SUP to improve those key aspects of your paddle stroke. And one thing I always notice too, if I'm focusing on like, say, one exercise, say I'm just focusing on my chest and shoulders and I'm doing that exercise over and over, like repetition over and over again, there's a lot of times too, I'll notice like other parts of my body that I'm using that I never noticed I used before. And so learning how to adapt my stroke to be better equipped to work on those other areas that maybe I need to work on as well. So it's just such a great tool to use in those exercises. I know that also for Kona, they do offer, they're working on building up like an online training system for Indoor SUP. So for those of you who do already have the system, I definitely encourage you guys to get plugged into that online network they're building up for video training sessions. They do have some stuff up there already. So I know if you're new to this Indoor SUP and you just don't really know where to start, definitely reach out to them. I know they'll get you connected onto that platform so you can watch some exercise videos to know how to use it. And then I also will to work on creating some videos for you guys here on YouTube for some exercises for you guys to follow along with and just help you in your journey to knowing how to use equipment also. Because I know for me, sometimes it's helpful having someone to guide you through a session or guide you through a workout to know how to do it properly rather than trying to figure it out on your own. So if you are looking for those resources, they do exist, and we're trying to get them built up to even better. But yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe Max, you have a thing or two you want to say about that in terms of your online platform and kind of what people can expect from that.
Yeah, we started to create that at the beginning. Started working with Indoor SUP 2 years ago, and we're looking into how to try to let people understand what's used for and not what they think it's used for, because that's been the problem. And so we have some videos there, and they're going to be more and more and more. And this last year, I was focusing on the testing to see what's happening with the bodies and what type of muscles we're working with, and the energy cost and so on. So that's a little bit behind, but we're going to put a lot of more videos in there as well. And if anyone have any specific questions that you might not be able to answer, don't hesitate to contact us directly and me directly, because I will gladly help you moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So be sure to reach out to their website there for their contacts, or I'll be leave Max in the mind to leave his email as well as business email down this description box below this video or podcast. So you can also send him a message and ask a question about Indoor SUP or an exercise or anything like that, because I know they're there to help you guys just as they have helped me learn how to use Indoor SUP. And that's what's great about Kona and their whole company there, is that they do care about you guys as paddlers, and they're not just trying to just push a product out there, because I think a lot of companies will sometimes just push a product out there. And so just know that people like Kona do care about you as a paddler. They want to see you enjoy more time on the water and just be a healthier person as well. And so that's, now I know it's the goal, even behind Indoor SUP, is just to help people have a better and healthier lifestyle, just overall as well, even off the water. So definitely reach out to them. Don't be afraid to ask questions about it too. Magnus, is there any other last things you want to say about today's session or anything like that, or any closing thoughts?
No, I think it's just more if that people really understand that they're working with their own bodies and not focusing on what other people do and so on. They start from themselves, because it doesn't matter. I'm nearly 60 years old soon, and I still improve, and that's my goal. How can I improve with doesn't matter age or whatever. If I have been away from the water for a long time, then I have to start with where I'm from at that point, and that's fun, because then I always improve. If I'm going to improve with myself 20 years back, that would be hard.
Oh, exactly. It's always a lifelong journey of learning and improving. And that's what's great about this sport of paddling, is that we continue to do that no matter what age we are. So yeah, but Magnus, thank you so much for your time of joining us in this podcast series, of showing us things about Indoor SUP, as well as just talking about some great tips and advice in terms of becoming better paddlers. So I really appreciate that. We have still quite a bit more to in line for this podcast, or things lined out. So I have some stuff I want to do in the future with this platform to help you guys become better paddlers as well, especially in terms of training. So be looking forward to that as we do some more episodes here in the future. But hope you guys enjoyed today's episode once again. I know I've really enjoyed these episodes with Magnus, just learning some things about paddling skills and Indoor SUP. So I hope you guys have as well. And like we said before, if you do have more questions about Indoor SUP or anything about that world, we do encourage you to reach out to either me or Magnus or Kona Sports and get those questions answered. So hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. And as always, get out there on the water this week, enjoy some time in nature, get refreshed, and have some fun paddling out there, improving your skills. So we'll talk to you guys next episode, and have a great week.